Hello and welcome to Afternoon Live. There's a live look on this Thursday from our Unico US Bancorp Tower over downtown Portland. I'm Karen Mack and we've got a great show planned for you. Okay, we often think of dogs as being happy-go-lucky, but in reality, many dogs have real fears. So here to help us teach our dogs to be less afraid is certified canine behavior consultant Brie Blakeman is back with us today. Hello, Brie. And your friend Kaia. And we've got Pocket here with us too. Hi, Pocket. Yes. Such a good little dog. Today we're talking about dogs and anxiety and fear. Very common.
It is very common, and it's not something that a lot of people realize is common. One study showed us that about 75% of dogs have some form of canine anxiety. And the thing is that a lot of us don't know how to recognize when a dog is anxious. So I'd like to start by maybe sharing some tips around how to recognize some of the more subtle signs of anxiety.
Yeah, what should you look for?
So a lot of people think a wagging tail is a happy dog.
No?
And the first thing I want to debunk is that a wagging tail does not necessarily mean that a dog is happy. In fact, a very fearful dog could actually wag their tail. So we don't want to use that as a barometer for how the dog is feeling. We want to look for more subtle signals, such as licking lips, yawning, panting, sniffing the ground, turning the head away, doing a full body shake off, like they're shaking off water off their body, and even holding their mouth really tightly closed with wide eyes and a stiff body. So if you're seeing a wagging tail, but you're also seeing some of these other signals, we're probably looking at a dog who is rather uncomfortable. So what do we do about that?
In what situations do you see that most?
It depends on the dog. It depends on the individual. Some dogs are going to be fearful of triggers such as bikes, new people, other dogs. Some it might be localized at the vet or getting handled or touched in a certain way. So knowing these canine communication signals is really important because it's going to help us identify for that individual what situations they actually feel uncomfortable in so that we can support them.
Can you train them out of it?
Not necessarily. So the socialization period for a dog is only up until 12 weeks of age. And after that, if they have feelings, uncomfortable feelings or negative associations with something, what we're going to be looking at is behavior modification. So helping them to feel more comfortable by pairing the thing they're afraid of with toys or with food. However, a fearful dog, they're always going to have some degree of fear. So it's not necessarily about changing that. Just like a person can be an introverted person, they're not necessarily going to stop being introverted, but they might learn some coping mechanisms to help them in social situations. And so that's what we want to do for our dogs, not change that fear, but help them onboard some coping mechanisms.
Okay, Pocket you worked with here.
Yes.
Is a fearful dog?
Yes, Pocket has fears primarily directed towards other dogs and skateboards. So that is very common for a herding type breed, things that move really fast, right? So genetics can play a really big part in why a dog might be fearful or reactive to certain things. So Pocket, to help Pocket set up for success, we invited Pocket to the studio before filming so that we could build some of those positive associations with meeting new people and being in this environment where there's bright lights, and it can be a pretty overwhelming situation for a lot of dogs.
And he's doing great.
He's doing great.
Let's pretend that right now he's not doing great. What are some ways that people should be approaching dogs even that are fearful?
Yeah, so the first thing is to actually not approach, but to let the dog approach you. And when the dog approaches, it's really essential that we recognize that they're just investigating. They're looking for information. They're not inviting touch. So the most common thing we try and do is loom over the dog and reach for them, and we don't want to do that. Instead, toss treats behind the dog. Maybe we should actually try it. What do you think?
Because you always heard put your hand out, and that's a big no-no?
It's no, because that is a space invasion, right? So if they're already worried about their space and we're reaching towards them, that's going to make that a little bit worse for them. So instead, I'm going to show Pocket, hi there, I have a treat, and I'm gonna toss it away so he is not pressured to come to me to get that food. We don't want to do this motion where we're kind of bribing the dog forward to get the food, because the dog might be really interested in the food, but once they take that treat, they're gonna look up and realize that they are in a very scary situation. And it's not gonna help them feel more secure. So if we're working with actual introductions, making sure that the guest stands sideways, doesn't give direct eye contact or even talk to the dog, but simply tosses treats neutrally away. Because if the dog doesn't have the chance to move away, if they don't learn that they can exit the situation, then we're taking away their flight. And when we take away their flight, what's left? Fight.
Right. What do you do, though, when your dog maybe starts growling or barking? You get embarrassed a little bit that you need to do something, right, about your dog misbehaving is maybe how it looks like.
Yeah,
but
that's
really
what a lot of
scared.
people think. Yeah, misbehaving, the dog is being bad, but that's not actually true. The dog is having a panic attack. So the best thing to do in that situation is to remove them from that situation altogether. So recognizing where your dog feels uncomfortable. If they are constantly reacting to other dogs and people on walks, skip the walk. You don't need to take your dog on a walk. There are other ways to enrich their world and get them exercise that isn't a neighborhood walk.
For instance?
For instance, you could rent a sniff spot, which is a really awesome like Airbnb for dog yards.
I've never heard of it.
It's super cool.
Yeah.
So you could rent a sniff spot. You could go to like a logging road and take your dog on an off-leash adventure out in nature. You could use puzzle toys and enrichment activities to get their core needs met, sniffing, dissecting, chewing. You can do all of that. For dogs who are fearful of guests coming over, having them go over to a neighbor's house that they trust when you're having people over, and just not forcing interaction. So the big thing is that we often think that we need to change the dog's fearful behavior. It's better to figure out where you can just avoid those situations altogether and not force your dog to interact.
I really want a pet pocket. Yay! So since he came over, I'm okay, right?
Yeah, so I would just make sure that we're not reaching forward, but we're letting him sniff. And one thing dog guardians can do is actually mark or treat the dog. So Kaia can do a little yes. Right, which sends Pocket away from me to get a treat. So Pocket is learning that when he feels brave enough to interact with a person,
good job.
That is a cue to come back to his person for a treat.
Love it.
And so he doesn't have to worry about what's going to happen. It's a predictable scenario. But going back to the growl, it's really important to say that we don't ever want to punish a dog who is growling. Because if we do, we're teaching them not to communicate. And a growl is a very appropriate form. It's a warning of saying, I'm uncomfortable, I need space. And if we punish that, then we're going to get a bite out of nowhere, where the dog does not express how they feel. They hide it all in, and they still have those negative feelings, and then they explode. So very important.
Such good tips always. Brie, thank you. Pocket, nice
so
job.
much.
Kaia, thanks for bringing them in. Yes, we're going to have more information about Brie on our website at KATU.com. Don't go away. We'll be right back.